Welcome to the Spiritual Principles Made Practical podcast. Today, I'm very excited that we have Liv Fisch with us. She's an author, a coach, a spiritual leader of all types and such. And going through your information, one of the things that really struck me that I was really drawn to is your focus on alignment and the joy and the inspiration and the wisdom that comes from that. And so, what do you do to help people get their mind, body, spirit lined up better?
I love that. What a great place to start. Well, thank you, Scott, for having me. I I never teach anything that I don't practice myself. So I'll share first that just from personal experience and something that's really helpful every day is to take about 8 minutes every day. It's called the 8 minute practice and have a quiet spot to sit to decide to connect to your most highest self, your true self, the truth of the universe, and really be a seeker in wanting to know that version of you and that version of you that is connected to everything else. And so, how I break it down for myself and my clients is I say it takes 8 minutes a day, and think of it like going to the gym to have your body strong, or think of it like taking a shower. It's like you got to go clean the body and you get to go connect to spirit. You get to go work out your body. You get to eat food. You get to drink water. Like there are things in the day that must happen for us to stay in alignment. And being able to sit quietly for 8 minutes is a really powerful practice. And so I'll have my clients either choose between three buckets in that practice where they're either sitting and using wisdom to heal themselves in some way of something that happened in the past. So through conditioning and trauma, we have things that come up that are disturbing us. And so I call this deep work. So they can go ahead and have wisdom help them with that deep work, that emotional pain, that place of grief or a place of loss of something that, they wanted but they didn't receive, or they longed for but they didn't get. And so there's an opportunity to go give yourself that right now in the present moment and change your cellular structure so that you're giving yourself the thing that you are deserving of, that you are worthy of, that someone else was not able to give you from the past. So that's the deep work, the inner child work people call it, or being able to, in my opinion, heal the past. Okay, or even if I can be so bold, change the past through this practice. And then there's work in to do in the present. So I call this presence work. That's being grateful, having a reverence for life, metta, loving kindness prayer, forgiveness, presence, noticing your thoughts and letting them pass. So simple meditation practice. So anything for 8 minutes, you could choose to do presence work. And then the third bucket is future work. So being able to say, okay, I feel like there's a calling, there's like this, something's coming for me. I'm getting this movement is wanting to happen. Okay, I can connect with my future self, or I can connect with my ancestors or spirit or the tree outside to say, what did I do next? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? What is next for me? What would you have me know? And so oftentimes people will ask, well, which bucket do I choose when I go
Right,
sit
right.
down? And if you are feeling like there's a lot of emotion in your space, if there's a lot of um, disturbance, you're being triggered a lot, there's something coming up for you, then I would say do some deep work. If there's a calm settling in your space, I would say keep staying and do some presence work. If you feel like, oh, there's something coming for me, or like there's a desire here that wants to be touched upon, future work is really powerful. And I do think that people having a balance between all three is quite beautiful. I think of it like a yin and the yang. Okay. In the middle is presence, and then the yin and the yang of it. And so moving through these three practices every day for 8 minutes. I do mine right in the corner there. If you're watching this on video, just on my little cozy corner. And it's just an opportunity to meet yourself. I think that is the best thing that we can all be doing, to just set the intentions and having a sense of alignment in our day.
Wow. I mean, I can relate to all of those three buckets.
Yeah, sometimes you can do them all at once. And not to say you can go over 8 minutes if you have the time, but
Right,
the consistency matters. That every single day, don't miss a day. And if you miss a day, don't miss twice. And
right, right.
every day you just are getting those reps in. Like if you want to have a strong body, you get your reps in. You do some movement to get your body strong. It is the same for living in alignment with your highest self. And what I have found when people are following this practice, it takes about 8 minutes a day if you can do it consistently. And then you'll find once you have the practice, you end up doing it in without having to sit still. You can do it I can do it while I'm talking to you. I can connect with my future self. Oh, I want to tell this story. Oh, I think this will be resonant for your audience. And I can hear what future self is wanting me to share. Right. So it will be more integrated, but I do think the practice of sitting still to do that for 8 minutes matters. It's just like if you go to the gym, I'm doing my squats, so my glutes and my legs can be strong. And then so that when I walk down the stairs to come down in my office, I don't trip on the stairs, right? I don't have to think about it, but I'm like, oh, I'm strong. I can walk down these crazy stairs to get down to my office, right? So it's integrated. That's how spiritual work can also be integrated.
Yeah, I think a lot of what happens is people don't realize, how many problems get averted by engaging in that spiritual practice, right? So it's like, well, you don't think about, well, I would have gotten in an accident if I hadn't been doing this, or I would have had, and it's, I
Mm-hmm.
always try to be a willing participant in my growth, not to have it forced on me, so to speak, it's like by denying it and having it show up in a place that is problematic, that I have to deal with it as opposed to choose to deal with it on my terms. But one of the things that is a big deal for me, and I think that you touched on it on your website, I'm trying to remember where I saw it,
Mm-hmm.
is having a global impact on things, and our consciousness having a global impact. And one of the to me, I look at it in terms of I say every goal that I'm inspired to have, I have that goal because I need to have the growth that's necessary in order to achieve that goal. And so for me, it just came up that I want to advance win-win thinking to where it's the dominant thinking in the world, not the only thinking, but that it's people routinely understand that they can experience being one with all things by engaging in win-win thinking, and that the the growth that's required of me to achieve that is to identify and relate to being one with all things and people. And so, and that would, I guess, speak to one of your buckets, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
But also, I think that, it's a lot of what comes up for me at least, and I want to ask you about this, is that there's a lot of wisdom that comes up in meditation that is not commonly adhered to. And how do you advise people in that circumstance? Like, I'll give you an example. Like, for me, I'm working on getting to a place where I'm very conscious of when I'm creating time with my mind and when I'm not. And that I'm have a growing awareness that past and future only exist um, in the present moment. So if the past only exists when I'm thinking about the past in the present moment. If I'm not thinking about the past in the present moment, it doesn't exist, and the same for the future. And so when I talk to people about, things like that, they kind of go like, mm. So how do you advise people when, or what's your response when you get inspiration that you're in alignment with, but is not commonly supported in our society?
Mm. Well, there's a lot there to touch upon that you just said. I like to say that, no one got the call but me, no one got the download but me. Like it was, why would I expect anybody else to understand a truth that I know to be true and am experiencing because I'm the only one that got the call. And so I think that part of the struggle or the suffering comes from needing to justify the call. needing to explain it too soon often. And what may be better is just the integrated wisdom as an example of that modeling, maybe is enough. And when others are questioning, why would you do that? That doesn't make sense to me. That can't be true because of this, and they're unable to hold the paradox sometimes, or unable to hold the complexity of integration of something that can be noticed without any act needed. It doesn't, there's no, if I see something that is not true, it's none of my business. My business is to stay true to whatever I'm meant to be doing. And so, and I think this ties into what you were speaking earlier to the collective consciousness, and how we all have a ripple effect of us. And I think that part of what is so harmful is when we forget that we have a ripple effect, we forget that we matter, essentially. And we forget that any thought or action we take is not just affecting us, it's actually affecting everything all the time, everywhere. And that can come with maybe immense pressure for some people who are like, oh my gosh, now I'm in hypervigilance, now I'm like scanning for like the things that I shouldn't be thinking about. And why am I praying for things I don't want, and you hear all of these things. And it's like, no, 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 don't go crazy. Okay. That's not going to be helpful for you or anybody else either. You come back and just recognize that what is the quality of your thoughts? What is the quality of your intention? What is the quality of even that desire or that calling that came? And I love this perspective that you share, that when you have this desire and you are reaching a goal, it's actually an opportunity for growth to say, here's what Scott gets to be and do now, right? Here's the gap, and here's the gap, right? And I often think that comes in the form of obstacles. So you're on your way, here's the mountaintop, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go there. But then what happens? You have something that always comes up. And the problem with life and with forgetting over and over again every day for all of us, including me, is that we don't want these obstacles. We just want to get to the top already. But these obstacles actually show us the gap. It's like, here it is, depending on how big or small that gap is. It's like, this is the growth edge. This is who life is asking us to be and do different. And then that obstacle will still be there, but it just won't be a problem once that elevation happens. And so that is something that I think when anybody is feeling that sense of like, oh, I have a vision, oh, I want this desire, oh, this is the experience that's for me, and they're recognizing there is that gap, my hope is to have everybody expect the gap, to think that if there wasn't a gap, it was probably the wrong mountain to climb in the first place.
Right,
So
right,
that's the growth edge.
right. Um, I have like I guess a little bit different point of view, but I think we're describing the same exact thing with different words. In that I think that, for me, I think about acceptance, and that when I look at it in terms of whenever I accept an idea or myself at a sufficiently great level, that acceptance is reflected back to me. And that if I'm not communicating what I want to communicate effectively, and it's not being, and by acceptance, I don't necessarily mean that people agree with me, but that they understand and accept that, yeah, okay, he's crazy, but I understand where he's at, right? Um, is I take it as a sign that I need to have greater acceptance within myself, that there's still something within myself that's not completely on board. I still have some internal conflict that
Mm,
needs to be resolved, because when um, I have a high enough level of acceptance, that will be reflected back to me.
I love that. That
And
also, I think that also can be true. And I also have experienced that not everybody in life is up to the same things. And
yeah,
so it would be impossible for everybody to understand an idea if they're not up to that path, or if they're not there on the path. Um, Not to say my path is better than anybody else's. It's just like this landscape is going to be confusing if you live over here in this landscape. And so I think it's okay that we have these differences. And I do think that confusion or someone not agreeing can also mean, depending on if that is a trigger for you, right? Like if that's a trigger for you, then yes, greater acceptance could be helpful so that it doesn't bother you to have
Right.
that. And I think that there's an opportunity to have such rich conversation when somebody is not agreeing with me.
Yeah.
That it's curious, when we're both in a curious space, it's like, oh, what are you talking about? Oh, I'm talking about this. What are you talking about? And that's just growth, right? That gets to mean everybody gets to grow. So I do think that a lot of um, struggle, even in friendships and family and um, countries, have gotten in themselves in a lot of trouble thinking that we all have to agree all the time and are not really open to the curiosity of what can this disagreement bring. We have this person over here and this person over here, and instead of recognizing, oh, there could be something beautiful here, it's just like, like, I got to fix myself, or I got to fix this person, and I got to get better, and you know and that, I think that can cause a lot of unnecessary stress, especially in our homes. Like if you think about how many arguments have been because one person had this idea and the other person had this idea, and then it just like imploded or exploded for both parties. So yeah, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. And I do think we're thinking
You
about
are.
the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just maybe from a different perspective. And I'll share with you, Scott, that I think that so much in life, maybe this is why I have my perspective here, is people do not understand me. I've been called a witch and an alien more times than I can count. Sometimes in a very beautiful, like a complimentary way, like, oh my God,
Uh-huh.
you're an alien, like, who are you? You're a witch, and a lot of times it's complimentary, but it's othering still. Does that make sense? It's still like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
you're
yeah. No, I
different,
know, I know that yeah.
you're like,
I've had
you're
people say, I never met anybody like you.
exactly like,
Yeah.
oh, you just think so differently, or things like that. And so I think that maybe I've had to build this idea of, when I'm confusing people, I'm probably on the right path. Like because most people are walking,
Well,
sleeping.
no, I mean that's awesome, right? And it's like, and and you probably have people in your life that say, I love Liv. She gets me thinking about stuff I never thought about before. So I'll bet you have a whole bunch of people that have that response to it, right?
Exactly. I've had to learn that I'm not, maybe not for everybody, but I'm for a lot of people who are wanting to do the work of personal development and who are curious about life and their part in it. I think that I really excite those people, especially those who are even, I some of my clients do come to me. I would say a lot of them come to me, maybe half, when they're below the line. They're operating just below the line and they're wanting to not, right? But there's, once we work together for about 3-4 months, they're living in a different baseline. And I do love working with those clients probably the most. It's probably where my zone of genius is, really, is to someone saying, my life is really beautiful, but I know that there's something else that's wanting to happen. How can I access that? Can you help me with that part? And I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. Like that gets me excited just saying that sentence.
Oh
So
yeah.
I think that there's um it's so I think not every this is why so many people need to be in this work, because all of our little signatures will resonate with a few,
Exactly.
hopefully. And then, you're going to resonate with different people, that I'm going to resonate. And that's okay, that we need many, many, many of us doing this work so that something is for, there's something out there for everybody.
Absolutely. And if one of us falls off the wagon, the whole ship doesn't capsize.
Exactly. Yeah. When I'm having my nervous breakdown over here in the corner, like, you'll take over here, right?
Well, one thing you said that I really appreciate that I'd like to just kind of emphasize a little bit because it's so valuable is talking to people that, disagree. I have a friend who's sort of on the opposite side of the political spectrum from me.
Mm,
But he's a dear, dear friend. And we get together and we talk politics and stuff. And you know what? It's amazing because 99.9% of the time we end up agreeing,
mm,
and it's like, and even in And even when we disagree, we agree in the respect that we've said, okay, well, we're not agreeing on what the facts are. And if we don't agree on what the facts are, then we can't really take the discussion any further. But we agree that we disagree about what the facts are.
Yeah, beautiful. That's
And
great. I
like
love
when we're
that.
like, okay, good, on to the
Yeah.
next topic, and I just think that, you know, I would love to see more and more of those types of discussions, where, but a lot of things we do come to agreement on,
Mm-hmm.
and my thinking has changed some, and his thinking has changed some, and it's been exciting growth for both of us, and I don't want people to be afraid to engage with people that think differently than they do.
Mm-hmm.
Because like what you said, right? It could, I mean, it could open up new ways of thinking. And, it's like that idea where I'm always excited when I find out I was wrong, because that means that I can change things to be more effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that that is a universal thing that we all get to recognize how much is it affecting our life. The need to be right, the righteousness. I call it the right train. When you hop on that right train and you start tooting your horn, you end up so far away from everything that you said that you cared about. And like for your friend, like if you jump on that right train with your buddy, it'll just take you further away from each other, not closer, right?
Right.
And I think that this happens in friendships, in relationships, oftentimes with children too, especially once they start talking, and they have an opinion about something. And, the parent wants to be right and they know better because they have lived experience and they're the wise ones, obviously, right? And so I think that it's one of those lessons in life that I continue to come back to is where am I in pain because I've been wanting to be right, because I've been hopping on my right train. And it's super sly for me. Like it's like super subtle. It's like a silent right train where sometimes I don't even realize I'm on it. I'm like, oh, holy crap, let me come back. So I think that it's one of those things that if you have good people in your life that you've given permission to be honest with you, which sometimes the more success you have, the less people are honest with you. So bringing in people and sharing with them, like, can you be the person to be honest with me when I'm falling asleep, when I'm hopping on my right train about something, or when can you point out those blind spots with me and for me? It's such a powerful practice to give people in your life permission to be your mirror. And so it doesn't have to be everybody. I would be very discerning about who you
Oh,
decide to
yeah.
do that with. But I do think that everybody could use about, 2 to 3 people that are going to call them on their BS. No matter who you are, no matter how much success you have blind spots. And when we don't have those people, this is when spirituality gets twisted into something very, very sad and coarse, for example. So that's a practice I have a lot of my clients do. I'm like, who in your life is actually honest with you besides me? Because my plan is not to be your coach forever, right? So someone else has to be able to call you on this. And will you allow the person who triggers you the most right now to be that person,
Oh,
possibly?
oh, yeah. My wife does not hesitate to tell me when I'm wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. You bring up a good topic here too, because our partners are usually the people in our life that will trigger us the most. And it's what we're doing with that trigger that will either bring us elevation or shame or destruction or growth. So I think that if you are in partnership or anybody you live with, really, I would say there's got to be, if you live with a bunch of people, then maybe just pick one. But there's an opportunity to let someone that you live with be that honest, give you that honest feedback that you don't want to hear.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things that, one of the characteristics that she has that I would want in anybody that I sort of invited to do that is that she is so tuned in to honesty. And if you give if you give an honest response, she'll accept it. But if you don't, she won't. And she
Mm-hmm.
knows the difference.
That's
So I
really
mean,
great
so you
discernment.
can't just sort of say, well, I'll just say, yeah, whatever, and it's like, no, we're not sweeping that under the rug, we're gonna deal with this.
Beautiful. It's amazing.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because it was one of the things that um we're coming up on our 40th anniversary now, and my first marriage barely lasted a year. And one of the big differences between the two is that um, I needed somebody in my life that would bring stuff up and say, look, we're gonna talk about this now,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
it's really made, it's one of the big reasons why I'm coming up on 40 years and this time and didn't make it to one last time.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
honesty, the ability to bring up hard conversations
Yeah.
is a big one.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. I, when I was creating my wife in my life, one of the things that I wanted was, and was very conscious about it, was that I wanted somebody that would open up new vistas for me, and that would not be so wrapped up in me that they would lose themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and would challenge me. And there are some days where I sincerely ask myself, I can't believe I'm not sure I wanted what I asked for.
Yeah, that's the trigger, right? When she's putting that mirror right up to you, calling you on your BS. Yeah.
But but ultimately I am happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be challenged, and I'm happy to have a wife that isn't so, wrapped up in my stuff that she loses her
Yeah.
identity and her own sense
Powerful.
of right and wrong
40.
stuff.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, but
powerful.
it's interesting, but I find it challenges my communication to talk to her because she has a very different, in some ways, very different, background. I mean, she's a unique person and sees things her own way, but and so sometimes I find it very challenging to communicate with her, but challenging in a good way, like with my good friends when I say something that's out there and I'm talking about time, right? And they say, well, you know, I'm not getting what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Mm-hmm.
I try again because so one of the things that I think is that there's an opportunity to adjust my language to be able to communicate better. So I stopped talking about light and I started talking about truth because people related a lot more to truth than they did to light. And when I talk about win-win solutions, when people don't understand that now, recently I thought, you know what, this big part of our culture is this idea that if you're um, down in the dumps, one way to lift yourself up is to go help somebody else. And that kind of that understanding has been incorporated into our culture really deeply. So now I use that to help people say, that's what win-win is,
Mm-hmm.
because it's I'm able to relate it to something that they understand and relate to and identify with. And so a lot of it I feel is that I joined Toastmasters 11 years ago because I want to be able to communicate what I want to communicate to a broader audience,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Beautiful.
And so if I talk about truth, people understand that a lot more than they understand light.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I think that that is also too, it's not that you weren't right to say light. It just might be more impactful to say truth, right? So
Right,
you're not having to undo a truth for you, to speak in a different way,
right,
and be authentic still. And I see you as someone who is a teacher, so to be able to translate the laws of the universe, truth, light, energy,
right.
spirit, whatever you want to call it, and be effective for the people you're speaking to. is what a great teacher does, right? So if I'm talking to you, I might be able to use a lot of variety of words, and maybe your audience can understand all the different ways we're going to talk about one single thing. But if I'm talking to someone who's never been introduced to any of this, I might call it self-leadership.
Right,
So,
right.
like if I'm in a group of, engineers at a team on-site meeting, like I was last week, I'm not using, connect with your spiritual heartbeat, connect with yourself, connect with your light. I'm saying, do you want to have the ability to self-lead so that when you are in an ever-changing landscape in your industry, in your field, you can deal with what's coming and know you're a part of that future, right? They're like, yes, I want that, right? Which is the same thing in my mind as, do you want alignment and spiritual connection to the divine?
Right. No, exactly, exactly. And I think that one of the things that has been really a wonderful surprise for me is the idea that when I'm really in the present moment, it's like I automatically choose the right words, and it without, as you say, without watering down the message,
Mm-hmm.
but and it so much of my coaching, is that before a meeting is I'll just focus on just being present and try to let go of whatever preconceptions I might have and and just trust that whatever I'm inspired to think, say, or do, if I'm in that deeply centered space, it's going to be optimal for everybody.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's what I would call your ability to be human medicine, your ability to be able to create a safe space where you're in deep trust with knowing that you are enough and you're worthy of being medicine to somebody else. And having the skill set, I do think it's a skill set and a practice that actually just can be taught to do that, by the way, to be able to have the words, have the insight, know exactly what to say to that person to create a great transformation, healing, understanding, insight, or even integration of how they're going to apply it to their specific life
Right.
that can be shared in that moment. I think I've shared such simple things sometimes, and then I'm going to get a tattoo. If I just remember that, my life is going to be so different, right? And so I think that is a great skill set that in my opinion, we all need to learn how to be great teachers in that way, to be able to be human medicine for ourselves first, and then be able to be human medicine for others in this way. And to essentially, whatever you want to call it, be the coach, be the person who can hold a safe container, be that teacher, be that guide. But really, it's like the opportunity to be in a space that you are wanting to serve, knowing that when you do, it is a win-win. Like you will get it back tenfold. Like whatever you put out, if I give you 2%, I'm gonna get 20,
Right,
And
right,
it's like
right.
knowing that is how it works allows us to be healed in that process as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like, I gave a speech one time, and I mean, I swear my feet didn't touch the ground for days.
Right. Exactly.
You know, I had something on my mind and I lost it. Anyway, oh, I know. One of the things that I find is so empowering and I do it, and I'm always happy when I'm inspired to do it, is to be so accepting of people that they feel so safe that they identify and share and acknowledge things within themselves that were there that they weren't conscious of before.
Mhm.
And it's really, I mean, I would much rather have somebody tap into their own wisdom than listen to me.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think that that's part of the holding the space, because I do think that if we can believe in the highest version of somebody before they can believe it in themselves, whatever that is, just like knowing I'm seeing the best version of you
Right.
in the holding of the space, then people automatically see themselves as that and then have insight for whatever it is that they're challenged by. And that is part of the medicine we can provide. But when we come in with our preconceived notions and our judgments and our own, like, I don't like the way he's holding this thing or saying that, why does he talk like that? Like, whatever it is that from our own background or from the past, essentially. So if we can just stay in the moment with someone and choose love, choose just to love this person who's sitting in front of you, magic happens, you know. And I think it's so funny with coaching and all the certifications I've got and like all of these frameworks I've learned along the way in the 20 years I've been doing this. But really, at the end of the day, I'm just loving people. And when I love people, they change. And it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and God bless you for having the smarts to do that. I mean, there's some people that get are so married to the framework that they inhibit the value that they can share.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I have a friend that took some coaching instruction and then eventually she left it for that reason.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They were so rigid in what they wanted her to do that she felt that it was restricting the value she could actually offer.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful to a point. I think that certifications and learning from people who have done this well is fantastic. And to recognize what's helpful and what's not in the moment is also important. And so I do think it's really important for people to have education and to learn and to be to be a student for life. I do
Oh
think that
yeah,
that's
absolutely.
so important. And so whether that's through a certification or through mentors or however route you want to go, um, and then at some point you got to practice the thing, like, and then how are you going to make it yours, you know?
Right.
And I'm actually talking later on to a coaching institute of one of the places I've got coaching, a coaching certification for. And they have this thing called the Coach's Corner where I'll be talking later today to a bunch of, people who are wanting to step into coaching. And I had a meeting with this person to, talk and make sure I was prepared for this conversation we're going to have. And she was asking me a question of like, do you think this certification is useful? And why was it useful for you? Kind of a question. And I shared with her, I was like, it was useful because as soon as I signed up for the program, I started coaching. Like it's like on day one, because with just knowing that I was going to receive great information, but information that's not demonstrated and practiced is never going to be useful to me. And I don't think it's actually going to be useful for anybody who's stepping into your program. And so I think that if I'm allowed to, I will share that with people to start. Like if they haven't already, to start, you sign up and then there's probably 20 people in your space that you are able to know or do something better than they have, or have figured out something that someone is trying to figure out. You have walked out of the burning building somehow, and there's still some people in that burning building. Why not say, hey, here's the door this way, and guide them to the door, out of the struggle. So that is something that I think is really important for all of us to know, that yes, knowledge is important. I can find out anything I need to know on this thing in 2 minutes. So, right. Information is useless now without being practiced. So I think that there's wisdom in the demonstration. There's wisdom in the embodiment of it through the practice, through the practice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that so, I mean, I have always, I mean, from as far back as I can remember almost, uh, been inspired to, make a global difference, and it's driven me. And I've the one thing that, I've always thought is that, and I made decisions around this is that I wanted to realize as much of my potential as I could. And that drives me, that's what drives me. And it's an inner thing. And so, is there something sort of on that order that drives you that, you have? I mean, for me, it's been like, as I say, as far back as I can remember, I wanted to make some kind of valuable contribution to the world somehow, some way.
That's so beautiful. Yeah, I think that at different stages and phases of my life, there's been lots of things that have driven me to do the work that I do. You know, on the hardest days though, I'm like, maybe I'll just work at Equinox or, I'm like, wait, what am I doing? So on the days that are like murky and hard, I'm like, wait, can I just work at Starbucks and call it a day? Why do I have this incessant need to like, do this work? But those come few and far between, thankfully, these days. But I think that I'll share with you, Scott, that I grew up in a really hard environment from the age of when I was born until I was 6. It was a cult-like environment where
Oh my.
people were essentially told how to live, who to marry. It was abusive. It was not a wonderful environment where someone had decided that they know truth, but people had to come to him to know truth, right? And so it was really disturbing to grow up in an environment where people's sovereignty, they were just handing it over to somebody else.
Yeah.
And that was the environment I grew up in. So what I think has to make meaning out of these hard times in my life, I think that part of the meaning I've made is that I got to see what it's like when somebody is not owning their power, owning their light, owning their love, whatever we want to call it today,
Right.
and deciding that someone else knows better, their own wisdom, their own truth. So, and that is something that's not actually here within us all. We all have wisdom that we can access at any time. And
Absolutely.
we all have this God self that we can rely on. And my hope is to share that with people. And I think that my desire and this fuel and momentum I've had through my 20-year career so far has been because of that. And it is really hard for me to be in spaces where I see people being in a place where they're so disempowered. They've forgot that they have this access to wisdom within.
Right.
And then when I had my daughter, who's now 8, being pregnant with her, she's gave me such wisdom and such a new life of recognizing that I was meant to do this bigger than I was doing it, essentially.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, like in a bigger way, bigger meaning bolder. Like it took more. I had to be bigger. I had to elevate. I had to be more in alignment. I needed to um, understand that any place where I wasn't feeling empowered, any place where I was still handing over power or waiting or blaming or complaining needed like major cleanup. And I became pretty allergic during that pregnancy to anything that was inauthentic and any BS even within myself. So when I am not in my truth, it feels very painful for me. And I think that was very a helpful time for me to do the work in a deeper way and then teach it in a more direct way as well. I think that I hid behind health coaching, fitness coaching for many years, decades, 2 decades, because I didn't want to just say the thing that actually needed to be said.
Right.
So I did it under the lens of like the body, or, oh, I don't want to touch spirituality because I saw what it looks like in a very toxic environment. I don't want to be that. And so it took a lot of courage to say, you know what, I actually can trust myself that that's not what I'm doing. And to have mirrors in my life for when I'm being off, right? And to adjust and trust in the call, trust in the impact I can make because of the life I've had and the history I've had to really elevate so many times, Scott, if I'm honest with you. Like the amount of shedding I've done in my life has been insane. I feel like I'm 165, but I'm 43. So I even look back on pictures from when I was 6, when I was 10, when I was 13, when I was 20, and I'm like, wow, like it's incredible how much I've changed through the decades of my life and had to. It wasn't an option for me. If I didn't, I would have died. I
Right.
am positive of that. And, or I would have been in jail, but most likely just died, actually. So I think that my motivation, yes, it's for maybe my karma because of the life I grew up in. Maybe it's a bit of wanting to share what I've learned to make sense of it. It's probably a little bit of wanting to be a great model for my child. It's for me to stay on track first and foremost. Like I know that if I wasn't teaching this, I would forget it tomorrow. Like I am doing this so that I can stay on my path, because it is it would be very challenging for me to live in this state of consciousness without really recognizing that every time I'm falling, I fall off my path. I go on the bumps of the road. The roadmap I do to come back is helpful to teach, to remember to stay on, if that makes sense.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, perfect sense.
Yeah. So this is a selfish endeavor because I I want to make sure I'm learning things and growing because I won't really survive this life without it. I'm too sensitive or something. Or I'll just leave. Like I will literally just go in a cave somewhere. I have astrologers sometimes I've gotten readings and they're like, "Oh my gosh, good thing you have the Saturn thing over here because otherwise you would literally not be able to be in the world or whatever." I don't actually know the deal with all of that,
Right.
but I know that I can go in and out of the world. And so I've done my best to do and create experiences for myself that keep me rooted. I got married, I have a child, I have a mortgage. Like I like to travel. Like there's some practical things that keep me in the world and I want to stay in the world. I don't think I'm someone who's meant to just go off and be in bliss forever or stay in an enlightened state. I'm meant to come in and out of awake and asleep so I can teach this. And I think that's just where my life path is so far. Maybe that will change. And if I talk to you in 5 years, and I'm like, oh, I actually meant to do something else. But so far, that's the rhythm of my life that has evolved so far. And this is why I do what I do.
Boy, does that make perfect sense to me, and I think we all probably have something, I mean, and and I grew up in a stable house other than the fact that there was no emotional maturity at all. I mean, my parents just did not have any clue what to do with emotions. And so, and my father told me, he said, when I was a kid, he said, you're going to have trouble because you have highs and lows a lot. And when I found spirituality, I found something that I could engage in that would give me greater mastery over those swings and stuff and be able to understand more of what that was all about and how to deal with it better. And that's been and what drives me, is that feeling of alignment and aliveness where I can feel um, the energy of just so much just of my essence, and that just that powerful. I mean, I've had some really powerful experiences, and
Mm.
I'm driven to experience, more and more of that energy that comes from, alignment. And but it really is, and I think about everybody, I think probably has something in their childhood that was that in my case, maybe I was born with it. Maybe, maybe it was because of the family somehow. I don't know, but something in their childhood that it comes out that this is the motivation for their path.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
You know what I mean? And some people are born with it, right? Like Mozart was born knowing how to play the piano. Nobody had to teach Mozart how to play the piano, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm,
he just
mm-hmm,
knew, right?
mm-hmm,
But it was still that was where joy lived for him.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so I'm thinking about, you know, I hadn't thought about this before, but it came up for me now, is that when I'm coaching people, I think maybe I'm gonna listen more closely for um, what's driving and shaping their life. Because I mean, you told a story what drive and shape and it's like I realized that, wanting to have some control over my moods
Mm.
is so important to me, that I mean, I was gonna spirituality will help me with this. Great, I'll do spirituality. If something else comes along where I feel more energy, more vitality, more alive, and more mastery over my moods and everything, then I'll shut that and go there. It's that's really like what you said, right? In 5 years, maybe you'll find something. You're open if there's something else,
Mm.
and it's that. But I think everybody has that, right? I think everybody has that that inherent drive to where they're I mean that's sort of what guides us all on our path, right? Is that the when we're on our path, that's when we're exuberant, that's when we're inspired, that's when we're uplifted, that's when you know we're unstoppable, that's when we can pick ourselves up for the 7,000th time and try again. I mean that's that's how we know we're on our path is that when we've got that level of energy to bring to life.
Mm. Hmm. Yeah, I think you're speaking on something important that sometimes I'll do with clients if it's relevant. Definitely, and when I do group settings, it tends to always be there, which is just a practice of knowing where you've been, where you are, and where you think you're going next, And it's a way to create meaning or an arc, especially for people who are in a like we all can be in a narrative of victimhood, like this happened to me and why does this keep happening? And oh, I'm aware of my pattern, but I can't get out of my pattern. And so being able to have an understanding, one's understanding, like we have to understand for ourselves, what are our drivers? What has driven us so far? And is that still want to be the drivers? This is, for what life is asking of me now. Because what I have found for myself and when I'm working with clients is that there's often a shame story that is driving us. A shame story of I'm bad, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm weird, I'm an alien, I'm not good enough, I'm too different. The list goes on and on. And sometimes those shame stories drive us to do what we're doing or okay, I don't feel worthy, so let me make a global impact. Like, oh, I grew up in here, let me make sure everybody is sovereign. Like, and so I think that there's a opportunity for all of us to recognize every day. It has to be an everyday practice because so quickly we can go off track of recognizing we think we're doing something for something wonderful and good, but really we're doing it because of fear or ego or trauma or conditioning. And so there's to say, okay, here's what it feels like in my shame story. And then what would it feel like in truth? Like for the true nature and the essence of me, what does it feel like to do the exact same thing? Because it's not what we're doing usually. Usually what we're doing is fine.
Right.
It's
How
how
we're
we're
doing.
being while we're doing it. Like, how
Exactly.
am I being while I'm growing this business and doing my podcast and coaching these clients and the drivers underneath it, because it could be the same story and the same outcome, but the suffering comes from where is it coming from? Is it a shame story or is it a shine story? Is it a one from victim or is it one from victory? Like, thriving or striving. So there's that piece that is helpful for me to tune into, especially with the work I do, because I do feel very, I take it seriously that people are coming to me because they have something that's going on in their life or they're wanting to access something greater for themselves. And I take that really seriously. I want to make sure that I'm coming to the table clean and clear and not coming from a place of ego, fear, or trying to prove something to somebody. So I do think that having that my own work like that apply and teach others how to do that too for their own stories has been really is so powerful. And if you want, I can share with your audience. Actually, there was a blog post I wrote. I don't think it's actually public. I think it was just in my a community platform shared. So I can share it with you around
Yeah.
actually a practice to do that. So like, how do you write your story, the story of your life
Oh,
to
that would
have
be
it
great.
make sense? And there's those prompts so people can, journal it out and do it. So I'll make sure to share that and you can put it in the show notes.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's just so I don't know, I just find it fascinating, the whole thing, I mean, the whole um so much of what I've gotten in meditation has been verified, and I have a friend who's a rabbi, and I say, oh, I've just had this insight, and I'm thinking about this and this. What do you think and stuff? He says, oh, well, there's a little known part of the Torah that talks about that,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's just to me, I mean, it's so fascinating to see how different people draw wisdom from the universe in their own unique way, but it's very identifiably as the same wisdom.
Yes. Yes. And it's so fun to remember again that we all have access to that, right? You're meditate and then it's like, oh, that was in the Torah. Like something I read today in the Bhagavad Gita was like, oh, I was just teaching that in my coaching session, right?
Right.
And even in the A Course of Miracles or in the Bible, like there's all there, everybody's accessing wisdom. Wisdom is wisdom is wisdom.
Exactly.
And we all
Exactly.
can do that by such simple things if the intention is high, whether it's meditation or going on a walk in nature or sitting next to a tree. Like it doesn't actually, or having a cup of tea, it doesn't actually have to look like anything. It could be in a conversation, but that intention and that desire to know wisdom then is available. And I think that that is something I do my best to not forget because when I do, it's so painful.
Yeah. There is always that, right?
Yeah, it's a whole forgetting thing that I'm like, oh, okay, gotta remember this.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get that. I'm always I've written 13 books. I'm on the 14th, and in every book I say I would never consider writing a book I didn't feel I needed to read, and so
Exactly.
I try to meditate and put as much of that wisdom in a comprehensible form as I can.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, this has been really great. Thank you. And
Yeah, thank you.
I'm excited about including in the chat your link that you have. Um,
Yeah, I'll be sure to share some useful information I think that could be helpful for your audience. Happy to have my team send that over to you.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else that you're inspired to say before we wrap this up?
Hmm. I just will say thank you for the fruitful conversation today. It helped me remember all of the things that I get to teach, and I just want to say thank you.
Well, and thank you for being such a delightful and uplifting and enjoyable guest because this is part of my life too, and I want to have fun.
Yeah, of course. Great. I love that.
But anyway, I've certainly enjoyed spending time with you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Scott.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.